Welcome to another conversation in People in Fundraising. This podcast features interviews with nonprofit professionals who discuss their career journeys, lessons learned, and enthusiasm for working in fundraising. And here is your host, the founder of People in Fundraising, Tim Wilson.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another conversation in the People in Fundraising podcast webcast series, where I invite guests from across the United States and around the world to talk about their experiences working in the nonprofit social impact sector, whether directly or in the past, or even experiences as a recipient of fundraising initiatives. Today, I'm really excited to welcome Dr. Joe Stabb to our program. You are the first guest representing Tennessee, Joe, so thank you for being here today.
I'm happy to be here, Tim. I'm really excited to have a discussion with you.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it as well. In fact, a previous guest, Rachel Walker, was the one who said, Tim, you've got to get Joe on your program. So thank you for saying yes to a stranger's outreach, and I'm looking forward to a great chat with you today.
Yeah, Rachel's great, and I'm looking forward. I'm excited to be here with you.
Wonderful. So if you could tell us, Joe, by your title and your institution, and then we'll get into the first question, please.
Yep. So I'm an assistant professor of practice in the Tombras School of Advertising and Public Relations, which is in the College of Communication and Information at the University of Tennessee-Knoxville.
Wonderful. Awesome. And before we began recording, I took a note. I think you'd mentioned that you were the first such hire in that school. Is that correct?
Yes. So
Okay.
in the Tombras School, I was the first professor of practice hired here.
Terrific. Well, dynamite. And how long have you had that appointment?
So this is my fourth academic year
Okay.
at UT. So
Terrific. Thank you for sharing that. Now, Joe, as I always do with each guest, we're going to rewind the career clock. And I'd love to hear first how you entered the nonprofit world. And I know you've been connected to nonprofits, but also in the advertising space and the overlaps there. So whatever you'd like to share, please.
Yeah, so in my career path, I've done a lot of very different things throughout my career. And in a lot of instances, I worked at nonprofit or not-for-profit organizations. So I've worked in education and on the administrative side. I've worked in healthcare, in communication and fundraising, human service nonprofits, social nonprofits. I think I've done a little bit of work, arts and entertainment organizations. So I've been lucky in my career that I've had a lot of very different experiences, types of organizations, size of organizations. So I've benefited in that. And one of in my early career, I was a community relations assistant at a long-term care facility.
Wow.
I worked for, I was a development assistant at an ARC organization. They call them ARCs in New York. It's an organization for people with intellectual disabilities.
Oh, okay.
And so I did some development work there. I really didn't know at that time what fundraising was.
Sure.
I was recording stuff in an old Access database at some of those organizations. We're talking late 90s Access, so it wasn't fun for anyone. But that was really my start into what is fundraising.
Awesome. Oh, great. And so I'm very curious, how did you transition into the academic discipline, in your current role ultimately?
So I started teaching in 2008.
Okay.
in the SUNY system in New York, so the State University of New York system.
Oh,
Started out as an adjunct, one class here, one class there.
yeah.
And really liked teaching. I really love working with students and kind of opening their eyes to what we do out in the field, whether it's communications, marketing, advertising, fundraising.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things, and I even realized I was the same way as a student. There are a lot of career paths that one can take that we just don't know about. And there are some that didn't
Certainly.
exist 20 years ago that exist now.
Yes.
So, I really like kind of working with them, and you can really see kind of like the light bulb go off as they
Mhm.
really kind of connect the dots and what you're saying. And that's really gratifying for me as when I
Mhm.
can start seeing them like connect the dots, or they'll email me years later and be like, oh yeah, I remember you saying this in class. And
Wow.
then guess what I'm doing now? Yes.
That's
So,
awesome.
it really kind of makes you feel good that, it eventually clicked, and, they remember that you were the one that kind of helped them get to that point in some
Totally.
way.
Totally. Yeah.
So, I knew back then, I only had my bachelor's degree then. I knew it was something that I wanted to do.
Mhm.
Um, I knew it's something that I would have to get a PhD to do.
Uh-huh.
Um, so throughout, as I worked full time, I got my master's, and then worked some more, and then I worked full time while actually working on my PhD.
Oh, wow.
So I had to, I had to be able to afford to pay for school and support
Good.
myself, and
Yeah.
um, so it was a really great experience, and I've always had really great faculty myself that I still keep in contact today
Oh,
with.
nice.
I've done some research with faculty that I had as professors in the past. So
Awesome.
hopefully it feels good for them that um, I call on them sometimes, but
Sure.
so that's kind of been my path as I've gone through. And where I started is kind of not where I'm at today with even what I teach. So, I now teach a lot of research methods and data analytics courses.
Okay.
And, those courses didn't exist 20 years ago or
Sure.
15 years ago. So, um, I'm able to really do a lot of things now that I had to learn while I was on the job over the past 15 years as we've gotten more metrics focused and more data driven focused.
Mm.
So,
That in
um,
itself is fascinating. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And
Mm.
I've been able to work with some really great nonprofits. Um, being a professor of practice, I can do more what we call scholar or creative work.
Okay.
So I'm not really doing a lot of scholarly stuff where I might, do a big research project and publish a paper in a journal.
Yeah.
I can do more creative work where I could go to a nonprofit locally and say, hey, I teach this in the classroom.
Mm.
Let me come in as a free consultant
Yeah.
and help you do something. And as long as you'll let me bring it back to the classroom and share it with students,
Mm.
you get all this free work.
Wow. Yeah.
So
That's a deal.
I do a lot of that now. Like I'll do different contracts, or I'll bring a nonprofit into the classroom, and there'll be the project we work on with students, and then they get all that valuable analysis or
Mm.
data or feedback or whatever it is we've done as a project for the nonprofit. So I can really give back in those ways.
Mm.
Um, to nonprofits that are doing really great work all over the country.
Yeah.
Um, and it's really impactful for the students because they're working on something that's real world, gives them exposure to different areas and different places they might go work after they graduate. So it's a really kind of nice symbiotic relationship.
That's really cool. Yeah. Thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah.
In that scenario there, do you look specifically at certain types of local nonprofits where you could say, hey, I'll work on this for free if I can take it back to the classroom? Or are you just sort of whatever is out that strikes your curiosity?
A lot of times those conversations happen organically.
Oh, okay.
Um, it might be through an association that I belong to, and I'm talking with another leader of a
Mm,
nonprofit,
hmm.
things like that. Sometimes there is some legal and regulatory issues that have to be overcome
Okay.
because, you know, one of the classes that I teach every semester is social media analytics.
Oh, wow.
But for us to do a full audit and really dig into an organization's analytics, the organization has to be comfortable with giving me administrative rights to all of their social media channels.
Yeah.
So like that
Yeah.
creates another layer of, depending on the organization, it could be regulatory compliance, it could be legal, it could be so. I've had some nonprofits in the past that I will sign an NDA with,
Oh, yeah.
and I don't mind doing that. We understand what I'm in there doing, and
Yeah.
I'm not going to do anything that I'm not supposed to. And they need to
Sure.
be comfortable with me that and have that trust with me that they're giving me this access, but I'm not one of their employees.
Right. Yeah.
So there has to be that relationship that I've built with them too, where they're comfortable in giving me that level of access and things like that. So
Yeah. Okay.
a lot of that is the relationship I have to build with leaders in our nonprofit community, whether it's here locally or regionally or nationally. If I want to incorporate that, that's also a level of risk they have to take if they want some of this work done
Right. Right.
for them.
Right.
So um, it's only been once or twice that some larger nonprofits um, we've been unable to kind of work it out just because of legal or some other laws around something.
I
So,
see. Okay.
but it's not because they don't want to or can't. There's
Yeah.
usually some legality reason on why I can't.
Oh, got it. Yeah. Interesting. Before we
So,
started recording, Joe, you were sharing with me that you teach 5 days a week and you have, was it four?
yep. So I teach a 4-4 course load, which is a full course load. I'm primarily what's considered teaching faculty.
Hmm.
So as a professor of practice, and usually a professor of practice is someone that has extensive work experience in the field
Hmm.
and has transitioned to teaching
Yeah.
and can bring that experience into the classroom in more like fields of practice or practical fields, which we are. So I teach um, courses primarily in our public relations major. So we have two degree tracks, one in advertising, one in public relations.
Okay.
And I primarily teach courses in public relations, and then I have some um, like school-wide courses, like social media analytics is both advertising and public relations.
Mm. Mm.
So we have some kind of crossover courses that are valuable for both majors.
Okay.
Um, and that's really, I've taught nonprofit management in the past. I've
Uh-huh.
taught a class entirely in fundraising
Oh, cool.
for undergraduate and graduate students as some of our special topics courses. Um, because many students from what I consider communication related fields, the skills are transferable, whether you go into, a pure public relations role or a pure marketing role or a pure advertising role or
Yeah.
a pure fundraising role. The skills that we need are very transferable between, and I always kind of refer to all these fields as communication related fields.
Yes.
So at the core of what we all do is communicating and building relationships
Hmm.
with certain stakeholders.
Yeah.
Fundraisers, a primary goal of an external facing fundraiser is to build a relationship with the donor.
Yes. Yeah.
We know if you can build a relationship with the donor, you can hopefully get them to donate more or
Mm.
more often or on a
Right.
regular base.
Yeah.
You want to garner that awareness and connection with the organization.
Yes.
All the other fields are doing the same thing. Advertising primarily traditionally is focused on consumers. So they want to build a relationship with the
Yeah.
consumer. So there's brand affinity and they want to buy something from the brand.
Correct. Yeah.
So, and public relations could have many stakeholders. It could be internal communications. It could be elected and government officials. It could be, so there's many publics that we might communicate with, but it's all
Mhm.
building good, solid relationships and building that trust with those stakeholder groups or those
Yes.
target audiences.
Yeah.
The thing that becomes different between all of them is we might have different organizational objectives
Yeah.
that we're trying to meet, and we might have different outcomes that we're measuring against.
Sure.
So, but at the core, it's all about, good, effective communication. Good messaging leads
Yeah.
then to that hopefully that KPI and that outcome that we're trying to measure and
Right.
meet so that our organization can move forward.
Hmm.
So I kind of refer to them all as communication related fields.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds smart.
So,
Yeah. Interesting. And about how many students do you have per class?
so class sizes vary,
Uh-huh.
depending on the course.
Yeah.
Most of our major related courses, are usually capped at like 40 students.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's a good
So,
size.
um, and we just learned that, so our school has been growing.
Oh, okay.
And we now have, I think, over 700 majors
Holy cow.
in the Tombras School of Advertising and Public Relations. So I
Whoa.
hope that's the right number. I think that's the last one I heard. Um,
Wow.
we've been growing. I have a lot of really amazing colleagues.
Awesome.
And we all like really support each other and
Yeah.
things like that. And we have a lot of amazing students
Mm.
doing great things among themselves. So
Yeah.
I really like it here, and enjoy the team and the school. Administration is great.
Mm.
At the
Awesome.
university, I know that's sometimes difficult to hear from faculty, but our administration here at the university is great.
Mm.
Um, so I've personally always felt supported in everything and stuff like that. So
Oh, that's awesome.
and I know they really care about our students. Our dean has drop-in hours for students.
Oh, wow. Oh,
And there's
man.
4 schools in our college. So um, it's really kind of a great student experience here. And we all work together to make that happen.
Oh,
So
that's fantastic. So
yeah.
this was not planned, Joe, but I am wearing an orange sweater, and you're at the University of Tennessee-Knoxville, which I think orange and white are their colors for the
Yes,
volunteers.
yes.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's the correct shade of orange.
Oh, okay. It looks like
Um,
behind over your shoulder. Is that red?
that's the wrong shade of orange.
Oh, okay.
Because that's from my undergraduate. Um, I'm trying to think, what do I have close that is the right shade of orange? So this
Oh, there we go.
is UT orange.
Got it. Yes.
So I have random things all over my office that are from different schools or our college or something that's around the office.
Oh
So
yeah, same here. Same here. I have this very old water bottle from my first employer, Harvard Business School, and I put a
Yes.
sticker of Weber State where I currently work. Someone said it looks like a Heinz ketchup bottle, and I was like drinking
It
water
does
from
look like Heinz Red. You should hold it up next to a bottle and see, because that's a thing with Heinz, is
Yeah.
they made all their bottles the color, the exact Heinz tomato, the ketchup actually has its own Pantone color.
Oh, I didn't
It
know
is
that.
a Pantone color, and branding wise, they made all of their bottles. The label is that the Pantone color, because
Huh.
that's how you know if a restaurant puts a non-Heinz product in a Heinz bottle. If it doesn't match, that means the ketchup is not the brand ketchup in that bottle, because it
Interesting.
doesn't match the red of the label. That's a whole
Wow.
like branding case study in advertising and product packaging.
Huh. Well, that was
So
the impromptu segue that related to the work you do. So,
yes.
well, Joe, thank you for going through sort of the career trajectory and your current professor of practice disciplines. I'd like to switch now because the title of this series is People and
Yes.
Fundraising. So I'd like to do a little bit of the professional and the personal. So this next question, because I work in prospect research, and so I do a little bit of research on my guests ahead of time, which I think sometimes can freak out guests, even though they get the questions ahead of time. But the question for you is related to about a year ago, you became one of the first gay men in, after it was the Mid-South or a certain region, Tennessee, that donated blood. And this was just months after new FDA regulations that allowed all people to donate blood. So I know that you also had other um, involvement with the Red Cross prior to being able to donate blood. So if you can talk with us about that, and I'm also really curious about what was the experience like for you to be able to donate blood and to help fulfill a mission for the organization that you've been involved with over time.
Yeah, so this is something I had always wanted to do and never could. And part of what I talk about is when I was 18 and went to give blood for the first time, it was in 1999, in the
Okay.
fall of 99,
Uh-huh.
when I was still in high school. I went to give blood at the local blood drives, which happened in the high school gym while we were in
Yes.
school.
Yes.
Um, and I was denied because there's a question that was on the form. If you were a gay male, then you could not donate.
Yes.
And part of that is historical um, context around FDA laws that came out in the 70s before they really knew anything about AIDS and HIV.
Yeah.
They really cut off a population, but the FDA hadn't updated any of their rules
Mm,
since then. So,
yeah.
as we learned more about diseases and communicable diseases and things like that. So,
Yeah.
which everyone always knows, government isn't always up to date with many
Right.
things.
Yes. Yeah, it's certainly true.
So, and that's where I kind of first learned like about this. And then, so when the FDA updated all of its rules, and I had been an advocate about that, I've written on it a few times over the years,
Okay.
for various media outlets. When it changed, I was like, okay, I want to go give blood for the first time.
Yeah.
And being the good PR person I am, and the good, nonprofit uh, leader that I am, I said, well, if I'm going to go give blood,
Hmm.
let's use this as an opportunity to educate others,
Yeah.
and as an opportunity to hopefully encourage others in a more conservative area of the country
Right.
to identify and give. So I approached the executive director for the local Red
Mm.
Cross here in Knoxville. Her name is Sharon.
Uh-huh.
Sharon was great. We know each other through Rotary.
Okay.
And so I sat down with Sharon. I said, Sharon, I have this crazy idea. This is what I want to do. What do you think? Do you think this is something like we could do? Do you think, everyone would be okay with it? And
Yeah.
she thought it was wonderful.
Awesome.
Immediately, like, let's hit the ground running. Let me pull in the regional communication team.
Wow.
Let's do all this. So I really got to engage with the Red Cross, um, with what I teach in the classroom. And
Yeah.
so I did bring this into the classroom and like share with students. Um, I worked with the Red Cross on reaching out to local media for the event.
Wow.
And it ended up being, we did this huge press conference. We
Awesome.
talked about the need for donors and the need for blood donations.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, if you identify as LGBT, then you can also now donate. And we
Yeah.
want you to donate. Like,
Yes.
please come and give.
Yes. Yeah.
So it was really great. It was kind of a good feeling for me because it's
Yeah.
something I wanted to do many years ago.
Yeah.
Um, and I know just from having conversations with the team at the Red Cross, I know that it did encourage others to
Awesome.
donate. So it did kind of help this really great need in our society because, there's blood donations are needed everywhere all the
Totally.
time.
Yeah.
So it was something really great and gave a connection and I was able to support that. So
Yeah. That's a wonderful story. And I admire you for looking beyond, for you, what it meant, but then seeing that this could be part of a larger communication effort, awareness effort, and, pulling in local media and the Red Cross and, having a press conference, like just raising awareness. That's really impressive. So,
at my core, I guess I'm a connector, as
uh-huh.
they say. I'm really good at meeting people. Even as a child, I had no issue walking up and talking to people. Um, I'm surprised I was never kidnapped as a child. Um, but I've always been really good at connecting and networking and maintaining those relationships and connections. And it's
Yeah,
something I've always excelled at. It's just part of who I am.
sure.
Um, I would like to think I made a good uh like gift officer when I did that, even though I don't personally like that role.
Uh-huh.
I
Yeah,
was good at it, and some people are amazing at it.
sure.
And some people love that. I like doing more of what you do. I like doing the research and metrics
Yes.
side of things. Um, but it's all in that building and maintaining relationships.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's what it comes down to. But it
Yeah,
was a great project.
that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
So outside of your professional responsibilities, Joe, I know that, we talked about the Red Cross just now. You've been an active volunteer with a wide range of nonprofit organizations. Do you have, whether it's a cause or a specific moment as a volunteer that, you know, crystallized for you the importance of being engaged in one's community?
Um, Gosh. So, um, I guess, growing up, so I come from, I would say, a very small city
Hmm.
in upstate New York.
Okay.
Um, in the between like Syracuse and Utica areas. So that's,
Okay.
the city I grew up in, maybe 40, 50,000 people.
Okay.
So we're talking small city.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I jokingly tell people I'm related to half the city to begin with, because I have a very large family that's all from the same city.
Okay.
Um, and but my mother will cry if she hears me say this.
Mm,
I have to give a lot of credit to my parents
mm,
in raising me. So,
mm-hmm,
um, I didn't come from a wealthy family by any means.
mm,
Both my parents worked, um, mostly blue collar jobs their whole lives. And most of my family works blue collar jobs, but I was raised to kind of, you know, help someone if they needed it.
yeah.
I was raised to treat everyone equal, regardless of what they do, how they do it,
Yeah.
what their economic status is.
Mm,
Um, and so I think that kind of is what affects me in going
yeah.
to help others.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm,
I really like doing different things, whether it's out picking up trash along the river, or it's, volunteering at the church soup kitchen,
yeah.
or, whatever it is. I just enjoy making like those little impacts.
Definitely.
Um, even now in my role, I'm not wealthy by any means, and in prospect research, everyone can tell I'm not wealthy. Um, so I even giving now for a lot of organizations, I tell places like I can't be the $20,000 a year donor,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I'm always happy to give my knowledge, my expertise, my skills.
Yeah.
I'm always happy to, jump in and do some manual labor if I need to.
Yeah.
I've done repairs on houses.
Oh, wow.
I
Wow.
shouldn't probably say any of this because I don't want people to know I know how to do any of this. But I was the board chair at a nonprofit
Mm,
that housed um um homeless LGBT youth.
oh, wow.
And there was
Mm,
just repairs that needed to get done around the house, and it wasn't in the budget. So I
yeah.
went in and, repaired the railing in the stairwell, and I went in and,
Yeah.
did repairs in the basement, and, YouTube some videos and worked myself through it. But I might not be able to be a donor that can be, a major gift donor on a consistent basis or anything.
Yeah.
But I like to say, I'm always willing to kind of, put the blood, sweat, and tears in it.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Whether that's, my expertise in what I teach and what I do and helping an organization, or if it's physically going and doing something.
Yeah.
Um, it's just, I, I know that I'm making an impact no matter what I do in helping that organization
Hmm.
in either scenario. So
Yeah.
that's what makes it really impactful for me.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to edit out that part about your repair work and
Yes. I grew up with a lot of family members that work construction.
okay.
So I've been around a lot. I don't like
Yeah.
to admit that I actually learned anything while I was around them. My father worked construction and maintenance and
Mm,
and things like that. So,
yeah.
going to work with him as a child, I think I picked up some things,
Mm,
but it's not usually at the top of my list. I really like doing these things.
right. Well, that's an interesting segue to our last question here. We have about 10 minutes. So you mentioned construction and repair work. This is a quote from Buckminster Fuller, who I feel like today would be called an interdisciplinarian. He was an architect, so that's the construction tie-in, philosopher, designer. He was a systems theorist. And as I was looking at a little bit about what you do as a professor of practice, I haven't asked another guest this particular question yet, but I do like sourcing quotes from people of prominence and relating it to these questionnaires. So I'm going to read the quote from the late Buckminster Fuller, and then I'd love to get your reflection on how what he's arguing in the quote may resonate with your experience, if that's all right.
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. So Buckminster Fuller once remarked, quote, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete." End of quote. So as you think about the work you've done, which is also very interdisciplinarian, what may have come to mind about maybe a model of your career or benefiting the institution, the work you do as a professor of practice? Anything along those lines?
So a few different things come to mind as I think about this. My mind first goes to, I really hate when someone, when we're talking about something we either want to do or want to change, and someone says, well, that's how we've always done it.
Yeah.
That really irks me all the time. And it drives the competitiveness in me because then I want to go find a bunch of data to support why we shouldn't do it that way. And that leads to the next thing. So, our reality, how we do things, the tools we use are evolving quickly.
Yeah.
And ever evolving more quickly now than they had in the past.
Yes.
So we need to constantly challenge, is this still the best way to do this?
Yeah.
Is this still the best way to communicate with this audience? Is this still the best way for us to collect donations?
Yeah.
To be honest, I talk with a lot of organizations all the time. I rarely check my postal mail. So if you mail me anything, an invitation to something, I'm probably not going to get it till after the fact. So you need to email me. And if you only take cash, I'm probably not going to show up because I never have cash on me.
Same. Yeah.
And there are some organizations that still do that, and it baffles my mind.
Yeah.
But because our environment that we operate in and do business in and things like that is changing very quickly all the time, that, there might be some things that, it's still good to do it this way, but there might be some new ways of doing it that could be better.
Sure.
And if we don't review that reality on some sort of consistent basis, then we're never going to progress forward, and our organizations are never going to grow and move forward in the society we're operating in.
Totally. Yeah.
But if you're going to do that, you need to have some data to back it up, which are things we never thought of 25 years ago.
Yeah.
In a nonprofit world, I don't know what nonprofits 25 or 30 years ago had data analytics people on staff.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Yeah.
I can't name one. And now it's almost unheard of to who's measuring what we're doing.
Yes.
And who's providing that dashboard.
Yeah.
So that we can make real-time decisions and is pulling in that real-time data. So we need to be looking at what that is, and that's just challenging our existing models to know, is this still the reality we need to be operating? Are these still the tools? Are these still the processes we need to do? We need to reevaluate on whatever cycle makes sense for the organization, how we do things.
Right.
And if there's something different, it doesn't hurt to try
Right.
it.
Yeah.
Like the world is not going to end because we tried something and it didn't work. We
The
know that didn't work and we can make adjustments and move forward.
right.
Um, some industries, maybe higher ed, has a little bit different of a pace that they operate in.
Certainly. Yeah.
But I know that most organizations need to learn like it's okay to take that risk
Yeah.
and try new ways or new tools or new things.
Yeah.
And I think that's the only way that, everyone's going to move forward and organizations are going to exist in 30 more years.
Correct. Yeah. I
So,
Yeah, as you were talking, Joe, was remembering I had a guest in my first season who works in prospect development, and her name is Ruthie Giles. She's on the Nedra
yeah,
board
I know
currently.
Ruthie. She's great.
Yeah, yeah, and she talked about this in that lens of existing models, and does this still make sense? Um, how prospect development should actually be the spoke, like on a bicycle. And too often it is like it's the center of the bicycle wheel. Too often it's a spoke, like it's reporting to the director of business operations and finance, or it reports to advancement services, or in my case, currently a campaign manager. And so Ruthie's like, those are all variations on an existing model that's been around for about 25, 30 years, like you're saying. But what if the director of prospect development reported to the vice president, reported to the CDO, chief development officer? Why aren't we doing that more? What is the is it, in this that you mentioned higher ed, like, is it the pace of the organization that we can't affect that change fast enough? Is it some other resistance? Like, what is going on?
So specifically with any sort of research, whether it's prospect research or a campaign research, all that information that we collect ahead of time, whether it's from primary or secondary data sources,
Yeah.
it baffles my mind how that happens in a lot of nonprofits and where that exists, like you talk about, because for decades of the field, and even in public relations and advertising and marketing and fundraising, it's pretty much all the same. We do research,
Yeah.
we plan something,
Uh-huh.
we implement something,
Yep.
and then we evaluate what we did.
Yes.
But if research is not a core tenet of that fundraising process, then you're going to have poor planning and poor implementation, and you may not reach your objectives when you evaluate,
Correct.
because everything we do now is based off of the research we do, that data we collect beforehand.
Yeah.
So you should be able to say, we're going to plan on doing this. Well, what in our research says we should do that?
Right.
What is the indication from research? And why should we go talk to this group of people over this group of people? Well, research can tell us that.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
the tactics we're going to use in implementation to reach out to those donors and engage with those donors. What in our research says those are what we should do, because based on the research, if we implement that, we can actually predict this is the outcome.
Right.
And then we can evaluate, did we reach or exceed that outcome?
Yeah. Yeah.
So research should really be a core tenet as part of the process. And that's in every textbook you read, it's been around for decades.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that's the theory to practice
Right.
translation, I guess.
And I'm a huge baseball fan. It just reminded me of Moneyball, which was the book about how the Oakland A's, used advanced scouting and metrics to track and predict player performance, clubhouse fit, and used that model to a good degree of success for a mid-sized market in the early 2000s. They just played their last game in the Coliseum in Oakland last week, so that's too bad. But yeah, you're right. You see that across industries. We're talking Major League Baseball, higher education, or other types of fundraising, and certainly the work you do. There's just a lot of commonalities with the research, implementation, and so forth.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Joe, this has been an amazing conversation. I think you've touched on a lot of topics, and you've done so with insight and humor and candidness, and I really just appreciate having the chance to feature you as a guest today.
I'm happy to be here, and I could talk forever, as everyone who knows me. So anytime, I'm happy to join anytime and have a conversation.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for being a great guest today. And for our audience, you'll be able to find Joe's conversation on LinkedIn, YouTube, Spotify, and Podbean in late November of 2024. Thank you all for supporting this content when it does go live across those channels. And Joe, I hope our paths cross someday in person.
So do I. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day.